Welcome back to another episode of Winning Through Culture. Amanda Kramer here today, and I'm excited to be with you to talk about what it really means to be recognized as a best place to work. This is a little bit of a flashback episode as we are looking to both Tim and TJ and the conversation they had back in April. TJ is the market president and publisher at the Charlotte Business Journal. And of course, Tim is my co-host for Winning Through Culture. And I know through their conversation, we've gotten a lot of questions and feedback around really what does it mean to be recognized as a best place to work? Now, this is not only a title that you can earn in the greater Charlotte community, but it is across the United States. And so we are really looking forward to digging a little bit deeper and again, having some flashback or rather listen back, considering that this is a podcast, to that episode that they recorded together and to have some more dialogue and hear from some additional perennial best places to work organizations in some coming episodes. So maybe you're interested in ways to improve your current work environment or culture that you're creating, or maybe you are wanting to hear about trends and things that other organizations are doing to ensure that they are a great place to work. And that is exactly what we're going to be covering both in today's episode and a couple of subsequent episodes to follow. So what I'm going to do first is take a quick flashback to the episode between Tim and TJ as it relates to really the science behind the coveted title of Best Places to Work. So without further ado, here's a flashback to Tim and TJ.
When you submit the nomination, it's not our newsroom judging it. There's truly a rubric, a science behind it that Quantum Workforce does the judging. And they have the national average of the score that you need to meet, whether it's, they break it down by categories, extra large, large, medium, and small companies. And each category has that national average. And if you're above it, that's where the rankings start.
Okay.
We rank each category from 1 to whatever that might be in the category. If you're below it, your culture still might be great, but it's just one of those where we can't honor 300 companies at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to put a national average. We stopped it there. That nominations, we get hundreds a year.
How many nominations?
And it's, hundreds. And there's some, that are literally, there's companies that are, let's just say for even math, the national average is 30.0. We'll have some that are 29.9, 29.8. They're right there, but they just aren't making the cut because obviously that's kind of what skews it towards that editorial side where we do make that decision and we do have to put a stopgap there. So after that, you can get the score. So you fill out, the process. It's a long process, but we have a lot of people that sometimes don't submit it because they might not want to know their culture. They might not want to know what they're going to see because you understand when you get those surveys, because if you ask Quantum, you can pay a little extra fee and they'll give you the surveys back from your employees.
Done that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's science behind it. It's I think that's the first piece that's important for people to understand, because I know we've had questions in the past, even in our organization. Well, how did we get picked?
Yeah.
And, I think it's a great place to start that it's not a local decision. It's a decision based on science that Quantum Workforce looks at all of these companies across the country. And
it's based on the employees, what they say. Yeah. And it's not, we get a lot of questions too, just to clarify, well, it's a popularity contest. You just look at the top tier companies in Charlotte and pick them just because you're trying to sell them a table package or trying to, it's like, no, it's truly what you said. It's based on the employee's response, and then the rubric feeds that, and then you get the overall average.
Yeah. Again, for us to have been participant for several years, I remember paying the extra money, investing in that to get the report from Quantum, because again, that is like a consulting project at that point for, again, a very reasonable price. Yeah, very insightful information to identify, target, and work on.
For better or worse, right?
Yes, that's the better part you want to feed, and the not so good part you want to pay attention to.
I know for me, listening to them, it really leads me to think about, okay, so there is a lot of categories, a lot of work and science that goes into someone or an organization rather that is awarded that title of best place to work. So really, what does that mean when an organization is thinking about the trends that they're facing and the ways in which they continually have to be intentional with the work that they are putting into their culture? So their employees, associates, affiliated parties, raise their hand every year and say, this is a great place to work. So what I'm thinking through is, how are we really encouraging employees, associates, and ultimately the culture that we have as it relates to remaining impactful and really staying relevant as things change, progress. And two, I know TJ talked a little bit about what was pre-COVID, post-COVID. So let's take a listen back to the trends conversation that TJ and Tim had.
How have the trends changed, TJ, or what have you seen over the last decade? Again, you've been with the Charlotte Business Journal for 17 years now, in some capacity. So what are the trends that you've seen and kind of where do you see things today going?
All right, you said, how long do we have?
We got plenty of time. We got plenty of time.
So the trend, the easiest way to put it is let's do it, and I hate to put it in pre-COVID and post-COVID terms.
Yes.
But this is
what
your whole, podcast is about, is that culture piece. And I truly believe that is the most important piece with any organization. So pre-COVID, the big thing you're starting to see, it's still always going to be the engagement, the trust, what's going on within the organizations to instill that culture, to give people a sense of meaning at work. That's always going to be there. So you can put that to the side. But we were starting to see like, hey, to attract talent, to keep that culture, to keep your team, we have a ping pong table in the room. We have a foosball table. We have a kegerator, come work for us. They were building this office space. If you didn't have that in there, you were behind the eight ball.
Yeah.
And the open floor plan. That was kind of the big. COVID comes, and I think it truly put into perspective. And this is what you're seeing the top companies come out of it. It's truly, first of all, what is the company's meaning?
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing in the community to give back? This day and age, the workforce, we can say the older generation, that's fine. But the workforce today is, what nonprofits are these companies supporting? What are they doing to put their money where their mouth is? You have all these DEI initiatives that are happening we talked about it with the George Floyd piece and all these companies coming out and making promises of, hey, we're going to do this and do that. The majority of them are putting their money where their mouth is. They're putting that into action. They're doing what they need to do. And the workforce is seeing that. And they want to work for companies that are passionate about that have true. They're just not coming in to punch a clock to be like, okay, 9, and when it gets 5, I'm out of here. And that leads into the whole work from home, the hybrid piece. You have the companies, the ones that are succeeding. I do always think there needs to be some type of, industries have been working remote for, I think hybrid is still the way it's going to be moving forward in some form or fashion.
Mm-hmm.
But with that being said, I think it's the leniencies these companies are giving their teams to trust them. So it's like, Tim, if I know you're working from home or you're doing your thing, you're not in the office, I'm seeing a desk, but I know you're doing your work because I can see what you're delivering. I can trust you. I don't have to ever worry that you're out playing golf while, you should be doing what you need to be doing because you're being employed by this company. So that is kind of the trend that I'm seeing. And it's, even with our company as well, we've always been, the media company, you always needed to be in the office 9 to 5 out in the community 24/7. And it's disrupted our industry as well.
Yeah, it's definitely that line. I think it's funny when you think about, I remember the early years of us being in Best Places to Work. And it was the foosball tables. It was the kegerator.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one year, I think we came in second place to a company that chartered a jet. All the people to like Puerto Rico or some Caribbean place. I was like, all right, if we're going to lose, that's, I get it. Get it. But now it seems, to your point, much more about purpose and impact. And is what I'm doing making a difference? Is who I'm working for making a difference? Are they contributing back to the community and the welfare of not only myself as an employee, but the rest of the community? So that seems to be a big shift.
As business owners, leaders of organization, there's definitely an opportunity as we put our time and attention into not only the conversations we're having, but the actions of ourselves and the greater team. Because at the end of the day, a great place to work or a best place to work really comes down to the people and the relationship that they have with the organization. There's a lot of science and reports that say that the number of connectivity opportunities that are available, so the connection points, really leads to overall satisfaction from an employee or associate standpoint. And, Best Places to Work recognizes business cultures that foster leadership development. And when we think about the employees and the associate, it all boils down to communication and really more listening to what's not being said versus what actually is being said. Employees and associates, they want to be heard, understood, and appreciated. And as we progress in our episodes of Winning Through Culture, we're actually going to hear from a couple of perennial best places to work leaders and organizations around what they have done to really make sure that those pieces being heard, understood, and appreciated are consistently looked at and provided. So what I'd like to do before we hop in and I give you a little preview of what is to come, let's take one more flashback look at the intentionality conversation that Tim and TJ had.
Everybody has a culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's a question of whether you intentionally create it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a static thing where you can just put it together, put it on cruise control and walk away. It's like driving a car. You better keep your hands on the wheel and pay attention. So it is something that's living, breathing. But what would be the key things you would say for someone who's starting to intentionally focus on their culture? Should they focus on?
I'll answer this kind of like how I would run the business journal in that regard, especially with less employees, it's a lot easier, obviously. But I mean, at the end of the day, it starts with that communication, just upfront, straightforward communication, meaning if I have my team, let's have a discussion. I want to have a discussion with every single body, everybody, and just be like, hey, what do you think the culture is?
Mm-hmm.
What do you want? Like, what's going to make you happy? I hate to use the Simon Sinek thing, but what is your why? What drives you? And then what do you want out of the organization? What do you need from me? And let's have that open conversation. Let's meet. If we need to meet in the middle, let's meet in the middle. But at the end of the day, just making everyone feel involved. And again, larger organizations, it's a little bit tougher. But that's where you have that, the middle management, the managers that have maybe 30 or 40 people under them. But then it's truly just having that authentic communication. Because what I see, the companies that struggle the most, and it happens with everyone because it's tough, is that internal communication.
Mm-hmm.
How are we communicating the changes that are going to be made? How we communicate it to everyone? Does people need to have an input? I know some decisions have to be made. They just have to be made. But if you think about it from an overall company standpoint, from a culture standpoint, that's where I think you need to have everyone involved. Everyone needs at least a say-so or a chance to have that say-so. And that's just going to keep everyone engaged. Because if I say something to my C-level executives here in the Charlotte office, and it's going to be heard, it makes you want to speak up even more. It's like, okay, well, that's great. I'm glad you hear me. What can I do to continue for you to trust me? So my input does matter. So I know communication is a very cliche answer, but it's the most important piece.
I heard you say something a little bit more than communication. So I'll unpack that for a minute. I heard transparency.
Yeah.
Not being afraid of reality and the truth and being able to position it and share it with people. Again, there's some things that can't be done in that way, but there are a lot of things that can.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I heard, and again, communication, I think often, unfortunately, people think of in terms of speaking versus listening.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about the importance of listening and literally hearing people. And that's something that I'm fond of saying that I did not make up myself, but there's three things that I think are an important component are, do people feel heard?
Yep.
Do they feel understood? Do they feel appreciated?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as you talked about communication, you talked about transparency, you talked about listening as much as, again, communicating back. And the other piece of that I think is also important to note is collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
The whole idea of top-down communication, like one person saying, all right, this is the deal, cascaded through the organization versus a collaborative environment where the conversation is getting people's input and helping everybody have a voice. Again, where appropriate, can't be done in every situation, but there are plenty that it can. And then people have a collective sense of, okay, I was heard, my voice made a difference, and I'm in on this. And that all really gets back to the whole idea of purpose.
So I hope you enjoyed hearing from Tim and TJ once more. And that full episode is available through Winning Through Culture. Again, it was released back in April, and I highly encourage you go and listen to the full conversation if that's of interest to you. But as we progress forward with Winning Through Culture over the next couple of episodes, it's really a great opportunity, as I said before, for us to hear from some perennial organizations. And when I say perennial, they've been continually nominated and then selected to receive that coveted title of Best Places to Work year over year. So as we look forward, I can't wait to hear more from not only Jarrett Latch of Spherical Media, but also Jeff Haney of ECM Solutions. Those are going to be two leaders and organizations we'll be highlighting in the next couple of episodes. And I really look forward to showcasing them, what the work that they're doing, and also the trends that they're looking at as it relates to continually being a best places to work. I hope you found today's episode and flashbacks impactful and relevant. And until we're together next time, have a great week.